Greetings, Joanne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Great. It's so great to see you. This is the Shift series with Full Circle Wellness Tools. And for those of you who may be watching, this is Joanne Cohen, and she joins us today from Southern California. It looks like a beautiful day outside.
We've been having this spell of, 80 degrees, and it's lovely, but it's the biggest drought we've ever had.
It's disconcerting right now.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Yes, I stand on the top of my hill in the morning, and it's just brown as far as the eye can see, which is a little
Oh,
disconcerting for wintertime.
yes, yes.
Yes, we need to do a collective rain dance, all of us.
Let's do it. Let's
Yes,
do
I love that idea.
it. That's fun.
Well, I'm super excited to have you here today. I've been a big fan of your work since the very first time I landed on your website, and I felt all of the love and the vibrational healing that obviously went into your work and then goes into even how you, again, put out the website and how you show up in the world, from everything from the colors you chose to your photographs, and you really embody this vibration of wellness. So I've been very attracted to you and your work, and I know we've talked before, but I learned something new, which is that you work with flower essences. And I had to admit that I had no experience with flower essences at all. So you were gracious enough to accept this invitation to talk with us and to talk with Full Circle Wellness about the work that you're doing in the world. So I just wanted to maybe invite you to tell us a little bit about how you got to doing what you're doing, and then teach us a little bit about the work you're doing in the world.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Lindsay. Your compliments on my website are just amazing because, when you put something out in the world, for me, obviously I want it to be received really well, but I'm honored that you received it in the way that it was intended. So my journey to where I've, kind of landed right now is just honestly through my own life experience and kind of journeying into really the depths of discovering my truths and who I am as a woman, and healing some physical health issues that range from hormonal to Lyme, and really coming to this place of watching my own experience and witnessing the experience of my clients, that there's always a root cause to our health.
Right.
And what happens for a lot of the women who come to see me for hormonal issues is that they've never even considered what the root cause is. They've gone to their doctor says take the birth control pill, or
Right.
I don't really know what to do for you.
Right.
And for me, finding out the root cause is the most important, because, one of the things that I always talk about is if we can touch into the wound, then healing happens. It's kind of like, when you stub your toe and immediately you put your hand on your foot, and just that touching in is like, okay, it feels a little bit better. I can go on with my day. And so that's what we need to give to ourselves, is that nourishment, that nurturance, that TLC, because a symptom just means there's something there for us to discover and uncover.
Absolutely. So I know that as you do this work, you work closely with herbs, but mostly flower essences. What is that process like, and how does one start on that journey?
Yeah, well, one of the things I discovered in my journey is that there was emotional wounding that was attached to my physical health.
Yeah.
And over the last 14 years doing this work with women, I have found that 98% of the time, there's trauma underneath the physical health issue. Like, I remember the first couple years I was working with women starting to realize, wait a minute, there's a common theme here. And it's really important. And when I talk about, feminine trauma, it's not just blatant sexual abuse or violation. It's anytime you said yes when you wanted to say no, anytime you were betrayed, anytime your self-worth was questioned, anytime you thought perfection was proof of your strength. And every woman is going to have had one of those experiences.
Sure.
So it's really important that we get to the root. And for me, in my experience in my life, the medicine that I used was flower essences. flower essences can unearth, can uncover, can pull out the subconscious debris, whether it's our mental patterns or the ways that we navigate through the world that aren't necessarily in our highest good. Flower essences can help us to create new patterns and new beliefs and new ways of navigating through the world. And they can also move imprints that have been in the tissue, trauma imprints from the tissue, move that out so that you can actually have physical healing as well. So they are amazing.
Miraculous.
Yeah.
And how does one administer them? For someone who's not familiar, I get this image of crushing flower petals in my kitchen.
Yeah. Well, to make a flower essence, which I don't know, people are interested, but that's a very, very simple, easy, it's very simple to make a flower essence. But if you're coming to me as a practitioner or you're going to the store to buy flower essences, they're already put in these little bottles. And you can mix and pour different ones to make yourself a formula that's going to address numerous things. And then you take it internally. And they're similar to homeopathic medicine in the fact that less is more.
Sure, okay.
Right, which is hard for our minds to comprehend because we think the bigger the better.
Right.
So with flower essences, you actually take very small amounts of it throughout the day, like 3 drops, 3 teeny tiny drops, 3 times a day.
Okay.
And because they're working at such a different level that you take less.
Okay. So this is going to bump into a whole lot of limiting beliefs for women. One, in order to be well, it's going to cost a lot of money. In order to be well, you have to take a whole bunch of stuff. In order to be well, it's got to be hard. It's got to be a protocol that's hard to... So what's some of the work you do with people as they begin to soften into real transformation and also realize, oh, it didn't necessarily have to be all of these things I was raised believing health was attached to?
I mean, I think it's such a great question because we're constantly faced with our limiting beliefs. And one of the things about first of all, flower essences, if you just go to the store to buy them, they're like $7 a bottle. Yeah. They're really, really inexpensive compared to an essential oil that could potentially be $50 or $100. Sure. So that's also one of the things that I love about flower essences is they're accessible and they're inexpensive.
Wonderful. Yeah.
To answer some of your other questions, I think those questions are a huge piece of our healing as women. Yeah. As women, we are taught to not make ourselves a priority, to put other people first. That I actually just read a quote from one of my teachers yesterday about how we believe that putting ourselves last is actually an act of generosity to another. Right? Like, I'll take care of my kids and my husband and my boss and all of these things because I have to and I'm nurturing, and then you feel depleted, exhausted, overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed out. Yep. So that's not a good quality of life. Right. So I think this question that you're asking is really, I always invite women to really, what do you want? Mm-hmm. What is it? If you really want healing, you do whatever it takes to get yourself there. And I'm saying that from experience. I've had times in my life where I've had no money. And I have done whatever it takes. I've asked the practitioner how I can pay in monthly payments. I've done work that I didn't really want to do, but I knew I had to because I had a vision for myself. Sure. And so I think it's a huge conversation of not only how we identify, but our self-worth and what we believe to be possible for ourselves.
Right, absolutely.
And some of this, some of healing is really hard. Yeah. Really being honest. And when you have a guide, a mentor, a practitioner, a coach to work with you, it's like every time I hire somebody to help me, whether it's for my health, my business, my relationship, I'm like, I can't believe I've been trying to do this myself. What have I been thinking?
Yes.
That's when it's hard.
Absolutely.
But
I'm
when I
encouraging people to not do it alone.
No, but that's like the world we live in. Like, you do it alone and you count on yourself and,
Yeah.
you bust it. But when we allow ourselves to just lean back in,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about the conversation of the feminine, the feminine receives. She can just, bring it on. I want to receive all this support and goodness.
Yes.
And that's a piece of what I do with my clients is hormonal health is just one part of the conversation of the feminine.
Yeah.
It's just giving us a snapshot that something within the feminine, within yourself, is out of balance.
Yeah.
And then we start to look, well, what else is there?
Yeah.
How else are you navigating through the world as a woman? Yeah. And what do you want to bring forward? So your questions are fantastic. And I think that they take a little bit more of prodding because I think as practitioners, as you and I, when somebody has those issues that come up, it's in their best service if you and I hold that space for them to delve into those patterns and bring awareness to how they're not nurturing and nourishing themselves.
Absolutely.
There's always money to be found. Oh, yeah. There's always pain in our lives, so it's just where you want to focus your attention. And so I think it's part of the bigger conversation of health.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree, and it's so exciting to hear you talk about it. A big transformational moment for me was when I realized that I just didn't want to do it that way anymore. I didn't want to spend another dollar on being sick, and I only wanted to invest in things that felt good and that felt like wellness. And one of the very first things I did, it seems so silly now, but I started putting the enzymes that I take at night in a really pretty little cup by the side of my bed. That was all the energy I had. I was so sick, but it was the very first gesture that I was placing a basket of love and intention around this thing that I was going to put in my body. And it made such a difference. And of course it cost nothing and it didn't take any time. And it opened that space for a new way to come in that had more ease and had more flow and allowed for that piece you're talking about, that receiving piece, which I really think is a huge key. I want to touch on something. We had the good fortune to get to interview you for Chronic Wellness Tools as well. And in it, you mentioned something that is coming up so strongly for me now hearing you talk, and that is that on some level we set our bar really low for wellness. So even as we're talking right now, we're kind of talking about the obstacles or overcoming, challenges. But I caught a glimmer and a vibration when you mentioned this belief that we have a birthright that is a lot higher than that. Can you paint a little bit of a picture of what is out there for us, that not just managing our health or dealing with PMS, but actually moving beyond some of that? And that may be something we haven't even seen around us.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
You ask fantastic questions.
Thank you.
And part of why I think that's such a fantastic question is because so often, and everything I say, I have done myself. I'm the first person to call myself out on my patterns. Yeah. But so many of the women that I work with, we get used to our symptoms. Like we like what you're saying is like we settle. We put this bar that's here. Right. And it's like, you know what? I have to stay in bed for 2 days with the worst cramps every month. Or I am a total bitch and totally irritated for at least half the month. Right. Or, the list goes on and on and on. And our society normalizes all of these symptoms. So it's just like, oh yeah, I have the worst cycle. Like, right. Right. And girlfriends get together and they commiserate. And, right. And part of it, what I'm really realizing, and this has only come in the past couple of weeks, is that it's really not our fault. Like, we learn that these cycles are something that happen to us rather than being in partnership with them. Right. And our cycles are so unbelievably powerful,
Right.
right? Like innately, we have the ability to create and give birth. And I'm not just talking about having a baby, and that is one of the miracles that we can do, but we can create and give birth to projects, ideas, relationships. I mean, our DNA is set up for that.
Yeah.
And when we ignore or disconnect or feel like, oh, that issue will go away at some point,
right,
or set the bar low, as you're saying, then we are in a relationship of something happening to us rather than saying, I want to be empowered to create something new for myself. It's really a new conversation,
yeah.
I feel like, for women. And I hope that it spreads like wildfire.
I do too. I hope you and I get to talk a lot more about it. This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah.
I always like to ask at the end, if there were one thing that women could do to open themselves up to what that potential is, or to begin to expand their picture of what their whole wellness could look like, what would that be?
You know, I was a doula for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
For 8 years, I watched and witnessed women give birth. And in that time, I was completely schooled in the ways of woman. And what I realized is that that's such an intimate, contained experience, but that every woman throughout her life has all of those qualities that she can express. And so I'm into both writing practices and like feminine embodiment practices to really connect with our feminine. Yeah. And one of the things that I love and all of my clients love is I have them do this practice where they stand up and they put one hand on their heart and one hand on their womb. And I like having nice music on or something. It's called a pelvic tilt. Mm-hmm. And you tilt your pelvis forward, backwards, mm-hmm. and then forwards really slowly, like slower than you even think is possible. And ideally you're standing up. And
sure.
But it's the idea of really engaging the womb, the source of your power. Like, how do you source your power? Where does that even come from? Mm-hmm. It comes from this place where you get to create and give birth over and over and over. And then your heart, of course, we have to engage the heart because it's the way in which you move then through the world. But I think this practice is so deep and so profound. All of my clients love it. Oh, yeah. And if you do it once a week, or maybe you like to do it every day, but just this connection of woman, yeah. Right? We often forget, we're just kind of busy doing our stuff, but connecting into woman, who you are, and where you source your power from.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and your time. Your Q&A will be below and people will be able to find your website there, but it is www.joanneameacohen.com. It's a great website. I encourage everyone to go spend a lot of time. It's an act of self-care and it's very just being there. And I look forward to having you in the Full Circle family, seeing you at a future Full Circle Wellness Tools Facebook party and more. So thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm honored.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.